I was looking, and I have the Kahot Chumash, you know that. And actually, Rabbi Posner wrote something about his little commentary on this Sedra has to do with that. So that's what I've decided I want to talk about.
Nice.
But I was looking for a higher level, more, it seems to me that the ending of Moshe is a big, it's a big deal. And the choosing of the conversation between God and Moshe regarding his successor,
Gotcha.
and God's saying he's not going to choose Moshe's sons, but he's Joshua, and he instructs Moses on how to do that, and then Moses he basically tells God what kind of successor he wants. So it seems to me that there's a lot there going on because of that moment between God and Moses. So I was just looking for something that talks about it at a more elevated spiritual level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me think about it.
I looked that Time series, but Bamidbar is not out in that series.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me,
and I looked through the Midrash, and I didn't really find anything. The other thing that's relevant is there's that section in there. I can't pronounce the woman's name, but the inheritance.
Slavchad.
I didn't delve into it, but it seems to me there's got to be a reason why that's in there between Pinchas and Moses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm working on.
All right. Yeah.
So I was looking for another source to read.
All right, let me think about what sources I have. Look, I'll tell you one undercover mystic is the Or HaChaim. It's the art school version of the Or HaChaim. So he was an open Kabbalist. What's interesting about him is he didn't follow the Hasidic way of teaching because he was in Spain and Morocco and Israel. But a lot of his stuff fits in very interesting mystically because his style of teaching. What?
But he also had connected with
Correct. I'm not talking about that now. Okay.
So anyway, I just wanted to
let's go chapter 12,
right.
day 74. Okay, so now we're talking about the mitzvah of reading the Torah. We were talking about prayer, then we talked about how to build a synagogue. Now we're going to talk about how to read the Torah. So Moses, so this is really important. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses himself, he set up that Jewish people should read the Torah in public on Shabbos, Monday, and Thursday in the morning, in order that you shouldn't go 3 days without hearing the Torah reading. Ezra the scribe, during the Babylonian exile, he said that you should read the Torah on Mincha on Shabbos, because the people who aren't able to make it in the mornings because they're they're at work. He also said you should read. He also set up. So Moshe's didn't set up exactly what to read or how much to read. Ezra set up that on Monday and Thursday you read for 3 people, and you can't read less than 10 verses. So now our Chumash and our Siddurim are all standardized. This is the first Aliyah, the second Aliyah, the third Aliyah. But back in the day, they didn't have good, punctuation in books. So a Torah reader would have to know how long can you make an Aliyah. Are you allowed to end on a sad point, a happy point? And they would, define the Aliyahs, and there are different ways of doing it. Eventually, if you look in different Chumashim, sometimes nowadays they're actually different. But there are different traditions of how to set up the Aliyah. So Monday and Thursday has to be at least 10 verses. Okay, these are the days that you read Torah in public: Shabbos, holidays, Rosh Chodesh, fast days, Chanukah, Purim, Monday, Thursday, every week. And you cannot do Haftarah we don't do Haftarah in prophets except Shabbos, holidays, Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av only. Okay. We don't read the Torah more than 10, but we don't read the Torah if there's less than 10 people who are adults who are free people. In other words, we don't count slaves in a minyan. And you can't read less than 10 verses each time you take out the Torah. And Vaidaber, Vaidaber, that standardized verse, is part of the count. You can't read more than less than 3 people, and you cannot begin a parsha with less than 3 verses. And we do so. Parsha, if you look in the Torah, parsha doesn't mean like a weekly parsha. It means like a section where there's like a indentation in the Torah. And you do not leave a parsha less than 3 verses, and you do not read less than 3 verses. So this is kind of what we're saying. So the minimal Torah reading on a Monday and Thursday is 10 verses, right? So that means 3, 3, 4. That's how you have to arrange it. However, you can't. Let's say you end and there's another parsha which is 3 verses long. Well, you got to include that. And there are all these different things you need to include in order to do a proper Torah reading. Nowadays, we all just have it in the book. It's standardized. But then someone who's reading the Torah would say, okay, no, we're going to have to go till here,
So did the Gabbais keep track of all of that? Or?
Probably the Gabbais or the Torah reader himself. Probably that was part of the practice of a Torah reader, to know know really well, where to start and when to finish.
The fact that they put it in the Chumash verse means that we don't have to keep track of it.
Correct. So that's a big deal. I mean, we're just a lot wealthier for the last couple hundred years that we can print books.
Information is
Yes. Okay, 3 people who read 10, and likely there were times where people argued and said, "Hey, you can't end Aliyah there. You have to continue on." No, because it was kind of a calculation that you had to be familiar with. Okay, 3 people who read 10 verses. 2 people read 3, and 1 reads 4. And if you read, it doesn't matter if you read 4 in the beginning or at the end or in the middle. In the middle is the best. Every single person opens the Torah, he looks at the place he's going to read, and then he says, Baruch Hashem Baruch. Everyone answers, Baruch Hashem Baruch Le'en. Then he says the blessing of the Torah of Shabbat Chabanim and Aslanos Teras Baruch Hashem Nasein Torah. Everyone says Amen, and afterwards he reads what he needs to read, and then he rolls it up, and then they make the second blessing of the Torah.
So it wasn't really about Kevin.
There was.
So how were these people read?
Either you could read it yourself or someone else could read. Okay, the one who's reading the Torah should not begin until everyone says Amen and the Amen is done. If he reads and he makes a mistake, even one letter, he goes back and he reads it properly. You can't read 2 people at a time. One person reads. If he reads and he stops reading, someone else can take over and start from when he finished off. And then you make a blessing afterwards. You're not allowed to read until
Senior
a senior member of the community reads, and even the chazan or the head, he doesn't read for himself until they tell someone greater to read. Someone needs to stand with him when he's reading it, just like the chazan stands with those who are reading. The reader of the Torah, he can skip from place to place in one chapter. For example, Acher Mois and Ach Basar, and that's so as long as he's not reading by heart. You're not allowed to read even one letter by heart, and you shouldn't wait. You shouldn't take time. You can only take time. So back in those days, one guy would read the verse, and then a translator would translate the verse. So you can only do that. If you're going. So there's only one time we do it on fast days. We actually skip a little part of the Torah. But it falls into the right category, but you shouldn't take time to skip. So only as long as the translator is translating. Once he's reading the Torah, you cannot speak while he's reading. Everyone has to be quiet and listen. Even Jewish Torah thoughts, you can't speak. You cannot go out while he's reading, you cannot go out of the congregation while he's reading. However, it's permitted to go out between person and person. Someone who is always studying Torah, and he never takes a break, ever. In other words, he never takes a break, goes home, so he can continue studying. From the times of Ezra, they established that there should be a translator translating each verse in order that people should understand. Again, they didn't have English books back then, so they would have a guy who would read the Torah, and verse by verse, the guy who would translate the Torah. He was called a turgaman. And in order that people should understand the words.
So, sorry to interrupt. They would translate verse by verse
Yes.
while it's being read.
Yes. Yes. And he would read one verse at a time, and then he'd be quiet, and the Turgoman would translate it. And then he'd do the second verse, and you're not allowed to do more than one verse at a time. The reader of the Torah cannot raise his voice louder than the Turgoman, and the Turgoman not more than the reader of the Torah. They have to do the same volume. And the translator is not allowed to translate until the verse is ended, and the reader is not allowed to read until the translation is ended. And the translator is not supposed to lean or sit or anything like that. Rather, he's supposed to stand in fear, and he shouldn't translate from reading. He should translate by heart. And the reader is not able to help the translator, so you shouldn't say, let's say the translator is looking for a word in Aramaic and the reader gives a word. Now, people might think that word is written in the Torah. A child can translate through a gadol, but a gadol cannot translate through a child. You can't have two translators at once. You need one reader and one translator. That's it. Not everything do we translate. The story of Reuven in the Torah.
So how do you know what to translate and what not to?
Well, we're going to go through what we don't translate. The story of Reuven in the Torah, the blessing of the Kohanim, the story of the Egel, the story until God spoke to Moses and Aaron, until Moses saw the nation, sinning. In another verse, Vayigoy Fesa'am, we read them, we don't translate. The story of Amnon, we in place where it says Amnon ben David, we read it, we don't read it, and we don't translate it. Now again, that's like a Haftorah. So these are all places which are controversial stories, where the Torah says something, and it's not to be taken at literal meaning. So if they would translate it, it wouldn't be a literal translation, but it wouldn't be understood literally. So therefore they said, just don't translate it. Read it and don't translate it. Like the Torah says that Reuven lied down with his mother, right? It says that's what he did. Now really, what did he do? The Jewish tradition is he moved the bed of his mother into Jacob's tent, which was wrong, but it wasn't such a bad sin, So therefore we don't translate them, because if we translate them, it wouldn't be a literal translation, it wouldn't be proper translation. At the same time, we don't want to give off the wrong impression to people who are not knowledgeable about the meaning of the Torah. Okay.
So if there's like an allegory that, like Shir Shirim, even though it's not Torah, the idea is the same.
Somewhat. These are mainly things that look really bad, that look like they might allow sins or whatever it is. The Torah might not be belittling sins, sometimes. So Rashi there says the reason why the Torah says Reuven did a terrible sin is because Reuven's really righteous. For him, it's considered a really bad thing what he did, even though it was a minor sin. So therefore, we don't want to. Certain times we don't want to give off the wrong impression. Okay, Haftorah we do from the prophets. You need to read from the Torah first, even 3 verses, and then you can read the Haftorah, right? So we read the Maftir, and then you shouldn't read from the Maftir until the Torah is rolled, and you shouldn't read less than 21 verses. But if it's a full concept in less than 20 verses, so our smallest Haftorah is 11 verses, then you can do that. If you read 10 verses, if you read 10 verses and then the guy translates it, that's enough, even though you didn't finish the idea. And prophets, one reads, and even 2 people can translate, and you can skip from idea to idea, and you don't skip from prophet to prophet. Rather, prophets you read, except in the prophets of the group of the 12 prophets. As long as you shouldn't skip from the beginning of a book to the end, and anyone who does skip, he shouldn't take time to skip. So back then, Haftorah, it originated, it'd say, hey, prepare a part of the prophets which is similar to the Torah reading. But after a while, it became established what Haftorahs we read. If you look in Sephardi, Ashkenazi, it's slight different traditions a lot of times, but it's all written down now. If you read prophets, you should read 3 verses at a time, and the translator translate it. But if they're in 3 separate parshas of the prophets, you do 1 at a time. If you make the one who reads the Haftorah, he makes the blessing before and blessings after. And he mentions Rosh Chodesh, and whatever reason they're reading it, he mentions it in the blessings after. How many people, number 16, how many people read in the Torah on Shabbos? We read 7, Yom Kippur 6, holidays 5, and you don't go less than 5, but you can add to that. Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed, you do 4, and on Yom Kippur, Mincha, and Mondays and Thursdays of every week, and Chanukah and Purim and the Shacharis and the fast days, we read 3. We don't do less than this, and we don't add on it. So there's certain times you can add aliyahs. The Lubavitch traditions we never add, but like a lot of shows, when they have like a big bar mitzvah, they'll add them on.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. A lady should not read in the community. She should not read the Torah because the honor of the community. So this is actually a very interesting line. What does that mean, because the honor of the community? So actually one of the rabbis of that era actually wrote, he said the way men are is if a lady reads better than the men won't come anymore. That's what he says. He said there won't be a congregation anymore if a lady will read and she'll do a really good job. A lot of men men have self-esteem issues, so a lot of men will just stop coming or stop doing it. They'll say, "You do it. We're not blessing the Torah anymore." Okay. A child who knows how to read.
What about the story about the rabbi?
I'm not saying it. A child who knows how to read and he knows who he's blessing, he can be one of the readers of the Torah. A maftir is counted
Can I do that?
on one of the readers because he's reading the Torah. But if the Shliach Tzibur says Kaddish between the last aliyah and between maftir, he's not counted as one of them. So that's what we do. We say Kaddish and we say the maftir.
Could I do that?
Okay,
So the maftir is not counted as an aliyah if you say Kaddish.
Yeah. A community that doesn't anyone who knows how to read except for one person. He goes and he reads and he goes down and sits down, and then he goes up and reads 2, 3 until he finishes all the counting on that day. On all reading, the Kohen reads first, and afterwards a Levi, and afterwards Yisrael. It's a custom nowadays that even if the Kohen is a Am Haaretz, even though if he's like not very knowledgeable or anything like that, he reads even before the greatest rabbi, and anyone who's greater than his friend in wisdom, he reads first. And the last one that reads the Sefer the rules of the Sefer Torah, he takes the reward of everybody, and therefore the one who finishes off can be even the greatest of the community. If there is no Kohen, we do a Yisrael. So you don't have to do a Levi first. That's just the tradition some people do. So in my shul growing up, they put the Levi first if there's no Kohen, because the Levi cannot get another aliyah besides the Levi or the maftir. However, if there was like a bar mitzvah or something and they needed to finish it off, you have to give a Kohen if he's there. But you can scratch the Levi.
The Levi can't go last?
He can go last.
I thought there was
He can go last, the maftir, the haftorah, and the Kohen could also do the haftorah, because that's not counted in the reading. But the Levi can only be first or second. If there's no Kohen, you can do a Yisrael. And if you do a Yisrael first, then you don't call up a Levi, right? Even the Levi gets second from the Kohen, but if you do Yisrael first, you cannot call up a Levi anymore. So if there's no Levi, the Kohen you called. So now let's say there's no Levi. What do? So you have a Kohen. He does the second Levi. He does 2 aliyahs, and he reads the second in the place of the Levi. But you cannot call another Kohen. So you can't do
a different Kohen.
You can't do a different Kohen because people might say, oh, maybe the first Kohen isn't a kosher Kohen. So therefore the tradition is the Kohen does first. And then similarly, you cannot do, if you do a Levi first, even though the Levi gets the second aliyah, hello, hey Ashi, if you do a Levi first, even though the Levi gets the second, if you do a Levi first, even though the Levi gets the second aliyah, you can't give 2 Leviim. Because someone will say, oh, the first Levi, maybe he's not a kosher Levi.
Well, what do you mean? Why would it? Why?
Okay, so how do you read in the Torah with the davening? What?
What are the second bit? Levi being not kosher Levi?
Well, if you do one Levi and then you bring another Levi, someone might say the first Levi is not kosher Levi. So therefore, our tradition is we do Kohen, Levi, Yisrael. If there's no Levi, we do Kohen, Yisrael. If there's no Kohen, we do. From halachically, you could start with the Yisrael. If you have a Levi and you want to give a Levi, he has to be first. Some people give a Levi first because that's what they do. So let's say, in a shul where there's like a lot of people that you want to give aliyahs, so sometimes they'll just skip out the Levi, which is allowed. Okay. How do you read the Torah with the prayers? Every day that there's Musaf, after you finish Shachris, you say Kaddish, you take out the Sefer Torah and you read it. When you finish it, you return the Sefer Torah to its place, you say Kaddish and you do Musaf. On days which there's a Maftir on Musaf, you say Kaddish before the Maftir, and then you say the Maftir, and then some say Kaddish after the Maftir. So that's what we mentioned before. Okay. On Mincha and Shabbos and Yom Kippur, after he finishes Ashrei and Uval Etzion, you say Kaddish. You take out the Torah, you say Kaddish, you do Mincha. You read the three Aliyahs, and then you say Kaddish, and then you do the Amidah. On fast days and Mincha as well, we'll do that on Tisha B'Av properly. After you say Kaddish, you pray the Mincha prayer, and then but on holidays, you don't read on Mincha in the afternoon. A day which doesn't have Musaf, when you finish Shachris, you say Kaddish. You say Kaddish, and you take out the Torah, and then you return it, and then afterwards you say Ashrei and Uval Etzion, and that's on a weekday like Monday and Thursday, and after you say Kaddish, and everyone can go home. You don't read in Chumishes, out of Chumishes in the Shul, because the honor to the community. And you don't roll a Sefer Torah in the community because it takes time, right? You don't want to give them time, say, oh, we're going to take a few minutes to roll it. So ideally you want to roll it before, right? Okay, therefore, if you need to read with two things, you should take out two Torahs, and you should not have one person read, what?
What do you mean not to use the Chumash because of the honor?
It's not honorable. You should get a Torah. You shouldn't. Okay. You should.
That's a lot of work, though, right? I mean,
What?
I'm going to bring out two Torahs and then not being able to roll
You should roll them
in front of the
before.
community?
Ideally, you should roll them before, so they're ready in the place. We roll them very fast with those rollers, which I guess is okay. I mean, but probably even that, ideally, we should roll before. A person should not read one thing in two Torahs, and maybe they'll say the first Torah is not kosher, right? So let's say you say, hey, we want to use two Torahs. Let's read the first three Aliyahs and the last four in the next Torah. You don't do that. Anyone who rolls a Torah, he rolls it from the outside, and when he tightens it from the inside. Again, we're talking about so let's say a Hagba, you lift it up, and you unroll it from the outside, and then you tighten the inside, and then you need to put it on with a seam, and that's and then the place that you put the Sefer Torah after you read it, and then you take it to another place to hide it. You're not able to go until the Torah goes, and they should follow it until the place that they put it. You know, some shuls had an ark in the front, but then they would keep the Torah in a safe or somewhere like that. Yeah.
Also, one more thing before you start Tanya, Uvalati, and technically, after you finish Uvalati, technically, you say Kaddish, and technically, you could go home. There's
Yeah,
more, but you don't put your tefillah back and towels back on. You could stop and then come back and say everything else later.
Yeah, that's correct. Okay. Just a second.
So what chapter are we
Chapter 32.
But we're, chapter 32. We're not too far into it.
Yeah. We're going to start from the beginning. Okay. So this is actually quite a wondrous chapter. Chapter 32. It's about Avos Yisrael, the Alter Rebbe loving of your fellow Jew. And the Alter Rebbe really explains it in a really deep way, based on the Tanya until chapter 32. And it's considered to be the heart of the Tanya, and you'll see why. The love of your fellow Jew, I'm not going to say, you're not supposed to say a mitzvah is important or not. But Rabbi Akiva says, it is a klal gadol, it is a very important mitzvah in the Torah, and we'll see why. It's the klal gadol, it's the big general mitzvah. And we'll see the Alter Rebbe has an amazing explanation. Some people say, well, the most important thing is love your fellow Jew. The other mitzvahs aren't so important. That is incorrect. All the mitzvahs are equally important to God. But we'll see, the Alter Rebbe is going to say that if you are able to love your fellow Jew no matter what, that will bring you to do all mitzvahs. All mitzvahs, and we'll see why. Okay. So, previously we were talking about sadness, and we were talking about what we called timtum olev. We said stuffness of the heart, stuffed heart and mind. You become indifferent to spirituality. And in the last two chapters, we basically explained that you have to put down your animal soul. And you have to set straight that your priorities in life are not survival or pleasure, but your priorities in life are meaning and spirituality and God, godly things, Torah and mitzvahs. And sometimes the reason why we get sad is because we get into a competitive mode or a very judgmental mode where we're judging physical success and physical things. And we said that no, you have to know those things are not important. The important things are your spiritual mission, your spiritual meaning. So the Alter Rebbe is going to continue with that line, talking about, well, once we're putting down our animal soul and our animalistic life, well, let's see what it can lead to. So, through what we spoke about in the two previous chapters, that your body is despicable and disgusting. In other words, you view yourself, your bodily needs, as animalistic needs. Only your joy will only be your soul's joy, right? Because there's nothing left from your bodily joy. Your joy will be your soul's joy. So now the Alter Rebbe says, so that's the goal. And we said, you'll actually be very happy. You'll say, wow, I have the opportunity to do a mitzvah. And in the end of the previous chapter, we said a person should also think about how maybe I'm not a great guy, but ani lo asisi atzmi, I didn't create myself. For some reason, God created me as a human, and then he put this lofty godly soul in it to accomplish some mission. So the Alter Rebbe says, when you think about that, now your joy is going to come for the success of when you have done a mitzvah, when you've studied Torah, when you've elevated yourself. That will be the most joyous thing. Okay. So this is the straight and easy way, love a lide, to come to kiyum mitzvahs ve'ahavta l'reich kamecha, to do the mitzvah of loving your fellow as yourself. L'chol nefesh miYisrael l'migadol v'ad katan, to every Jewish person, from a great guy to a small guy, right? That's because your body and bodies in general, because your body and your animal soul is despicable in front of you. And as we said before, and the soul, you look at a Jewish person, you say, okay, so he's not a great guy. But his soul, who knows how great his soul is? We can't even imagine how great his soul is in its origin, right? So when a person lowers his his physical inhibition, and he lowers his outlook of the physical world being the real world, and he starts viewing everybody as a soul, well, who knows how great their soul is, right? And how great my soul is. We know one thing for sure. All the souls are very, very close to God. They're all God's son, and God is their father. Every Jewish soul is super lofty and super holy and super righteous and super great. So now when we remove the physical veil of the world, now we can appreciate, well, everyone's soul is really, really lofty and really special. And they all come from the same origin. My soul and his soul, they come from the same origin. That's why Jewish people in the Torah and all over, they're called brothers. It's literal. It's brothers. They're literally brothers. When we're looking at Jewish souls, they're brothers because they come from the same origin in God, from God. So since we all come from one and we're brothers, and if we're able to put down our bodily kind of affairs, we're able to view everyone else and we're able to feel it that we're really brothers. What makes us different people then? We all come from the same source. Our bodies divide us. If somebody makes their body the main thing in their life and their soul is secondary, you cannot have true love between each other. Ella tluyus b'davar levada, and the Alter Rebbe continues on. He says, and this is this is the idea that it is dependent on. So, here in the notes from the Rebbe, there's a long explanation here, but I'm going to kind of I'm going to kind of summarize it. So the idea basically is like this. There's two types of love, and we kind of alluded to yesterday. There's love to a friend and love to a child. One of the things I saw, when I was in yeshiva, there's some, just like any teenage group in the Orthodox group, there's some kids that do drugs or whatever it is, So I saw it always works like this. If a parent calls up the yeshiva and says, kick that kid out of yeshiva, right? See, I don't want him in my son's yeshiva. He's doing this. But when it's your own child or your brother, suddenly they say, you don't understand, he's a good guy. He just was misled, hung around with the wrong friends, right? That's how we view literally family versus other people sometimes. Someone that we know and care about, when they do something wrong, we don't say like, I want nothing to do with him usually. We say, no, he's a victim. He's really a good person, he's a victim. Someone that we don't know, we're like, I want nothing to do with them. So why is that? So there's two types of love. And to put it in short, there's love that sometimes we love people for a reason. We have someone, our personalities click. So we don't really love them. We love their personality. Then you have love of a child. We love them. What if we don't click with their personality? What if we don't click with their personality? Oh, well, they're a victim. It's not really them. That's not really their fault, right? We view them. So one is we actually love them, and one, we love their personality. Now, with children, usually you love them, right? So anything they do wrong, well, that's not their fault, or we find a good and with ourselves, for sure, we always find a good excuse, right? We're always compassionate with ourselves. Some people aren't compassionate with themselves, and it's actually a psychological problem sometimes. So here's what we're explaining. You have souls. The souls are all good, and they all come from the same source, and they're literally brothers. And then they come into bodies. Bodies make you a separate person, right? The Torah says you have to love your fellow as yourself. So just like you love your actual self, just like humans love their actual self, in other words, they have compassion to themselves. They don't love their personality. A lot of times we don't care about our personality. Similarly, when you're looking at someone as a soul, then you can love them just like you love yourself. So the Alter Rebbe says, so if you're looking at people as bodies and personalities, both physical bodies or spiritual, I don't mean spiritual, but emotional bodies, intellectual bodies, then you will not be able to love someone as yourself because you're valuing their personality. But if you know that there's something deeper, and that's the soul, and that's what you have, so then you can love them as yourself. So I just want to note, sometimes we don't love ourselves. People don't love themselves. Usually it's because they're unaware of their soul. They think they're a bad person, but they're unaware that they have a soul themselves, and their soul is perfect. And God put their soul, this perfect soul, in a, for better words, a prison to bring God to that prison, which is their body, and to fulfill the most important mission and a great thing. But we need to, so in other words, if you look at yourself as a soul, then you can look at other people as souls, and then you can truly love them. So no matter what bad they did, even to you, you can say, well, I love their soul. So we're going to take that concept here and kind of define it, keep defining it and dig into it. Yeah.
Seems like you could go further because to a human being, there's no way to differentiate between souls. And therefore, only God could make that differentiation. So actually, if you are aware that your fellow Jew has a soul which is like your soul, that person is actually yourself.
Correct. Exactly.
So because there's no differentiation when we're between people when we're at the level of the soul.
So that's the deeper meaning of love your fellow as yourself. You realize that he's really yourself.
Yeah.
That's what we're. So now the Rebbe added to this in the last mimer. The Rebbe kind of said that you also have to love the body and the physical, but from a soul perspective. In other words, when you see someone do something wrong and you know that that wrong thing is part of their mission, in other words, that's a battle with their soul, so then you can, even the wrong thing that you do, you can have compassion for. But anyways, we're going to go through the Tanya. So the Tanya is saying, love your fellow as yourself. Well, he is yourself, right? He is yourself. So the mitzvah is to realize, so in order, what we're saying now, in the chapter here, we're saying the previous chapters, we're learning, just like when it comes to ourselves and we're all melancholy and we're not able to serve God, we have to put down our physical values. When we put down our physical values, we're able to love someone as ourselves. And realize, when I give to them, I'm really giving to myself. Okay, we're going to go on. Okay. V'zehu sha'amar Hillel hazakim. This is what Hillel the elder said. So there's this great story that a convert went to Shammai. Shammai and Hillel were the two rabbis of that era. They had two yeshivas. Convert went to Shammai and he said, I want to know the whole Torah on one foot. Right? So Shammai says, get out of here. You can't know the whole Torah on one foot. Hillel says, the whole Torah is love your fellow as yourself, and the rest is commentary. So the commentators ask, now, there's kind of a kind of modern liberal interpretation where people say, the most important thing, just love your fellow. The other mitzvahs aren't so important. But obviously that's not true. So the commentators ask, they say, one second, there's two types of mitzvahs. There are the mitzvahs between your fellow and yourself. If you love your fellow as yourself, then automatically you'll do all the other mitzvahs between your fellow and yourself. You don't want to hurt somebody. That's yourself, right? However, what about the mitzvahs between you and God? The whole Torah, the mitzvahs between you and God, how does it help if you love your fellow? How will that cause you to do mitzvahs between you and God? You got the question? So that's the famous question that many commentators ask on that section of the Talmud. So this mitzvah is seemingly, if you say this mitzvah, look, we have a couple hundred mitzvahs between you and your friend. If you just really love your fellow, you'll do all those mitzvahs, right? You'll be conscious. You'll try and help. You won't charge him interest, or because you'll say, well, I love him as myself, right? I don't want to charge myself interest, right? So they say it makes sense. What Hillel is saying is great for the mitzvahs between man and man. But the mitzvah between man and God, how will it help you keep Shabbos if you love your fellow as yourself? So now the Alter Rebbe, based on what we said, he's going to give this amazing answer. Because Yisoid v'shayrish kol ha'Torah, the fundamental idea of the Torah, the fundamental idea behind the Torah, hu lahagbiya lahalis nefesh halaguf. It is to lift your soul on top of your body, to make your soul the main thing. That is the key to the Torah. The key to the Torah is my soul is more important than my body. My soul needs are more important than my body needs. Ma'ila ma'ila ad ikar v'shosh shadachal means you want to lift it up to its source. You want to bring your soul out and show, no, the soul is God's child. It's a piece of God. This is so important to follow. So now, it comes out that if someone loves their fellow as themselves, because he's viewing himself as a soul, so then he'll do all the mitzvahs. Because all the mitzvahs are not so important to your body, they're all important to your soul. So this is what Hillel is saying. He's saying the purpose of the Torah is transcendence of the soul over the body. If you'll come to truly love your fellow as yourself, which is by viewing him as a soul, by viewing yourself as a soul, well then you'll do all the mitzvahs because you're a soul. But if you're loving your fellow because something about him, that won't cause you to do all the mitzvahs. But if you love him kamocha, you really love him because you realize he's not a body, he's a soul. And I'm not a body, I'm a soul. So then that's the key to doing all the mitzvahs.
But yesterday,
Yeah.
we had this discussion about which is holier, the body or the soul. How does that?
So the way it works is the human is really the soul. Through the body, what we were saying yesterday. So now let's say if let's say me and you, right? Obviously, Israel. Let's say we never came down into bodies. Do you guys love each other? Of course, you're the same thing, right? Of course, you're the same thing. When the soul goes through the body and has to do Ahavas Yisrael, now if you say to the soul, do you love him? yes, look how much I love him. Even when I'm in a body, I transcend the body. So what we're saying is if you look at it that way, the soul and bodies are partners. There's the soul by itself, and then there's the soul through the body. The body and the soul can't survive without each other ultimately. But the body elevates the soul to higher than it was without it itself.
How does the body elevate the soul?
Because when the soul does mitzvahs through the body, it gets to make sacrifices, it gets to commit.
The body is the part that has to do the mitzvah.
Yeah, so basically when the soul does the mitzvah through the body, the soul is elevated to higher than it was before it was in. So like if you say, hey, do you love Paul because he's a piece of God and you're a piece of God? So before you're born, that's a really simple thing. It's obvious. When you're born in a body and you have a choice, you can live a physical life, rat race life, right? You can hate each other, but you choose to say in the body, which is who I feel I am, I'm going to live a soul life. Then the soul gets to feel how close we really are. How close we really are. In other words, let me just say it another way. If we're both in soul form, and you say, do you like Paul? Well, we're brothers, right? We're brothers. Is he a good guy? Yeah, he's also a good guy. We're both souls, right? But if you take brothers and you put them in a challenging situation, when they're able to beat each other, so to speak, and they care about each other as brothers in that situation, you are now revealing a deeper connection. So when we have Ahavas Yisrael before we're born, let's say, I would say, oh, you guys really love each other? Let's see how much you guys love each other. I'm going to put you in bodies, and let's see if you guys love each other. So when you go into a body, and then you face the challenges of the body, that the body, has all sorts of desires or whatever it is, survival of the fittest. You face the challenges of the bodies, and you nevertheless connect as souls. So then the soul gets to feel much closer to God. That's what we were saying yesterday. So soul and the body, they're partners. What we're saying is there's the soul without the body and the soul with the body.
The part that troubles me about this is that the Alter Rebbe says here that the body is despicable, but that can't be true because the body is holy. I mean, we're made in Bereshit, when man is created, the verse says that we're created in the image of God. Isn't that verse referring to the physical body of the human being?
So it doesn't say in the image of God. It says in the image of Elohim. Big difference, right? Different names of God. That's a complicated verse and subject. But when Adam sinned, he was no longer in the image of God. His body was not really acting in the image of God. The image of God, actually, it says it kind of left him. When we do mitzvahs, we bring the image of God. We reveal the image of God in us. So our bodies have potential of being in the image of God, of doing good. When we don't do good things, right, we're not acting in the image of God. We're disconnecting ourselves from God. So the concept after Adam sinned, actually, this is what the Tanya says in the beginning. After Adam sinned, our bodies started being born, and our innate nature of our bodies was not to do what God wants anymore. That's what we were born into. Most of our bodies are selfish. They don't do things, they don't say, wake up in the morning and say, what can I do for God? They say, what can I do to feel good?
So this is the concept of original sin.
It's related, yes.
It's not a Jewish concept, though, is it?
It is. I mean, I don't know what original sin is, but it is related. In other words, so now what we're doing in life, is we're actually showing our purpose of our life as our soul coming down to our body to show that our body does belong to God. It does not belong to itself. Bodies naturally feel that we created ourselves. We are in charge of ourselves. And the soul feels that God is in charge. And life is the soul teaching the body that God is in charge of. In other words, the soul is the one saying, you can't just act the way you want. You are the image of God. So what the Alter Rebbe is saying, that our body is despicable, is he's saying that in our born natural state, our body just wants to serve himself. So, it's actually really beautiful. And actually, you mentioned Viktor Frankl, and there's a lot of writing on the Rebbe about Viktor Frankl. In fact, Viktor Frankl, you can watch a video online. Viktor Frankl put tefillin on every day because of the Rebbe. Now, what's unique about it is Freud was kind of like the animal, the body. He kind of represented the body. Do humans want to survive? Survival of the fittest? Yes. What Viktor Frankl said, he said basically, is that is your body without the soul.
But we have certain practices in Judaism that, like, we don't do tattoos
Correct.
because our body is godly. I mean,
Yes,
what-
correct.
we don't respect the innate quality of the body as is a creation of God, notwithstanding Adam's sin.
Well, so the tattoos, right? That is your choice. So let's say someone says, I hate tattoos. Oh, good, there's a mitzvah not to get a tattoo. Wow, I should get a trophy for doing the mitzvah, right? It's like, no, you did not reveal your soul and your body by not getting a tattoo. You're not interested in a tattoo. Now, let's say you take someone who wants to get a tattoo. They want to. They like the way it looks. And you say, the Torah says not to get a tattoo. What are they doing? They are now sanctifying their body.
That's not what I'm saying, though. The idea that we respect, that we are commanded
Yeah.
to respect our body, whether we do it intentionally or not. But the commandment, let's say, to respect your body is because it is holy. It is God's creation.
It belongs to God. Yeah.
So whether or not, how I behave with respect to that is not the question I'm asking. I'm saying the reason,
Yes, correct.
if we, again, is it a hook or is it so there's a dimension of holiness in,
Correct.
not in the body. The body has an aspect of holiness, because that's what so it bothers me that we say that the body is despicable. It can't be.
Well, what we're saying is, so this is what we're saying. So let's say, Napoleon, right? What was their belief? Their belief was the body is everything. The body is holy. On its own right, you don't have to do anything to do it. Your eating is holy because it's the body. Judaism doesn't believe that. Judaism believes that the body is a medium to be holy. You can have your body has holy potential in it. So now, when somebody gets a tattoo, right? They're making a statement that my body does not belong to God, it belongs to me. When someone wants to get a tattoo and they don't get one, they're making a statement that even though I want to get a tattoo and I feel the body belongs to me, I am going to remind myself that the body really belongs to God. So now when the Alter Rebbe says your body is despicable, he's not talking, when you do a mitzvah is holy. He's talking about your natural state of your body. In other words, your Freudian state of your body. So if someone will say, hey, my body's holy, listen to my body, right? Or someone says, my religion is following my body needs. That's not holy. Your religion is following, God is the creator of your body.
My body is my temple.
So this is what we're doing. So is the body a temple? The Torah says yes. If you do mitzvahs, your body's a temple. You are showing that your body belongs to God. So the Alter Rebbe, in the previous chapter, he's saying, why is it that you're not indifferent to Judaism? Because you think your body is important on its own right. Your body's importance is in the context of your soul. That's what your body's importance is. So the Alter Rebbe, and that's how a lot of the mitzvahs are. A lot of the mitzvahs are stationed that God says, do this with your body. What is the default? When God gives a mitzvah, the default is you wouldn't do it. That's the default. So if you tell the Alter Rebbe, is your body holy? The answer is it has holy if it's used holy. It has holy potential. if you would say, don't get a tattoo because your body's holy. Well, because your body doesn't belong to you, it belongs to God. The person who the Alter Rebbe is talking to in the previous chapter, what the Alter Rebbe was saying is, he's saying, you forgot that you have a soul. If you'll remember you have a soul, you'll remember who the body belongs to. If you don't remember that you have a soul, then you'll think the body belongs to yourself.
I have to think about this. I think I don't want to,
Wait, so like what did Adam do? What Adam did is he took his body, which belonged to God, and he said, no, the body's going to follow what I want, right? So he used his body for an unholy purpose.
I don't want to pursue it because I have to think about it, but I do, my gut, I think there's, what bothers me about it is it seems to me, within this argument, which I don't fully understand, it seems to me there's a contradiction of some kind. That the concepts of body and soul are at odds with one another. That I haven't resolved that. So I have to think. We wouldn't have a body if God didn't give us a body. And therefore it has the qualities that God created. How we also have a consciousness, and there is this, we have the concept of the evil inclination and the good inclination, and they're what direct the body. So it's actually, I don't fully grasp how everything interacts, how the soul, the good inclination, the evil inclination, and the body are all working together or opposed to one another. I see, in this section, the rhetoric is and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but the language that the Alter Rebbe is using is to bring out a concept of the soul that he thinks is important, which is the brotherly love concept, which is very important. But in the process of doing that, he's denigrating the role of the body